Hey guys, welcome back to another Tumbler tutorial. Today we're going to be working on this little camper mug from the Stainless Steel Depot. Can you tell I'm out of practice? So one thing that I'm going to make sure to do with this one is to sand it and prep it and then wipe it down with rubbing alcohol. I don't know what it is about this specific mug from the Stainless Steel Depot. Every single time that I epoxy this, the first coat of epoxy pulls away from the top layer, like the top rim of the cup. I don't know why. I do all of the things to prep it to make sure it doesn't happen, and it still happens. So if you're using this mug, make sure that you're prepping it. I've used tons of different epoxies over the years. I've used polycrylic along the top rim to prevent any like pullbacks of the epoxy. Nothing works. I don't know what the deal is, but anyways, what we're going to do is prep that and then we'll spray paint it with a light pink, and then we're going to go in and we're going to apply the first coat of epoxy and glitter in one. So we're putting some glitter into the epoxy, just a little bit. You don't want it to be clumpy. You want it to still be normal, like epoxy consistency. But we're just going to put a little bit on there and then we'll let it cure just like normal. I used coconut from Chase Ray Creations. And once you've got that all applied to the tumbler and the handle, we're going to torch that and let that cure. Once that's fully cured, we're going to go in with some painter's tape and we're going to tape off the handle. This is completely optional if you want to spray over it or if you want to make it a different color, plaid, whatever. You don't have to do the tape if you don't want to. It's just how I wanted to do my design. So we're going to tape that off and then we'll move into taping off the plaid. I am using a 1-inch painter's tape for this entire design. So if you've got that on hand, that works really nicely to fit around this cup. After the handle's taped off, I'm going to use that handle as a vertical kind of starting point. Instead of marking off a vertical line on my tumbler, I'm just going to use the tape and butt it right up to the edge of the handle, and then I'm going to lay the tape down, lay a placeholder piece of tape down, lay a full piece of tape down, pull up the placeholder, so on and so forth, like I'm showing you here in this clip. And then once you get to the opposite end of the handle, if there is not a perfect 1-inch gap, you'll just need to back up and kind of shift your pieces of tape just a little bit so they all still look even, but there's not a huge gap at the end of the handle. You'll notice here that I skipped one of the stripes at the end on the handle. I do go back and I fix that, but I wanted to get the rest of this placed down first. And then once you've got all of your vertical pieces put on your cup, I'm going to just tuck those ends in, making sure that we've got a nice tight seal with our painter's tape because we don't want any of the spray paint to seep under that. So again, we're going to follow the same process, but going horizontal this time. So I'm using the placeholder at the top for the first top inch, and then we'll put a full piece of tape around horizontally, moving that placeholder. We're going to put that down, and then we're going to use the second piece of horizontal tape, and we're going to put that all the way around, and then we'll go back and remove that placeholder tape. You will be left with a little gap at the bottom. That is totally fine. We're going to go in next, and we're going to glitter that. I got some new spray paint and I hadn't used it before, and so my little hack to kind of test out the true color of the paint without committing and putting it on a tumbler is to shake it up and spray it on a piece of printer paper or white cardboard, something that's white so you can get an idea of what the actual color is going to be. I do hit it with a heat gun because it looks a little bit darker when it's wet. You can get the full effect when it is fully dry. So just spray paint that on paper, dry it, and then you can commit to a color without having to spray paint it on the cup and remove it if you hate it. I did mark off the sections that needed to be painted and in what color. So the top horizontal row is going to alternate medium pink, light pink. That's going to be for the first and third row. And then for the second and fourth row, you're going to be dark pink and medium pink. So pause that if you need to screenshot it, or you can just look at the colors at the end of the video. I show you the end result, and you'll just color coordinate with your color palette to match the light, medium, and dark colors on my color palette. So once we've got that spray painted, we're going to remove just the horizontal painter's tape. We're going to leave the vertical tape on there. We're going to let this dry. I will say that I definitely did not give this paint more time to dry. It was okay, but because of the issues with the epoxy pulling back from that top rim, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it did pull back some of that paint. So I would let that sit or go over it with, no, that's not going to work. I was going to say go over it with some epoxy, but you got to leave your painter's tape on for it. So disregard that. Anyways, so I'm going to go back over it and I'm going to remark off the sections that need to be spray painted. The LP is light pink, MP medium pink, DP is dark pink, purple, sorry, not pink. And is that purple or is that pink? It's mauve, really. I don't know. I used P for pink. It's definitely not pink. Oh, my Lanta, you guys. Okay, so once I've got that marked back off, I'm going to go over the vertical paint lines. We're going to tape those off. We don't want any of that spray paint that we've already painted exposed. I'm going to cover that up with tape, and then we're going to go over the vertical lines as well, and we're going to cover up every single vertical line because we don't want that to be painted on. We're going to spray paint our darkest color next, and so that is just the one set of dark squares that we want. So just the exposed pink that you see right now, that's what we're going to spray paint. I did mention earlier that I had to go back and fix some squares on my little tape off section by the handle. So you'll see me do that here. I'm just going to give you a live explanation in the moment as I'm doing it. So I just realized that I did not record this. I don't know what I was thinking. My phone was sitting right here next to me. So we're going to cover all of these vertical lines. I kept the original tape line on just because I had it marked off. So cover these, and then we're going to go back over it and we're going to cover the horizontal lines as well that have been spray painted, leaving these two sets of lines. These are going to be our dark lines. I do need to cover this up real quick here. I gotta find my little mark lines. Let me see here. So my 1 inch didn't exactly line up, so I'm just gonna make my own little 1 inch mark here. Making sure that falls in line with what's underneath here as well. And then I can see right here, that's where the end of it is. So I'm just gonna eyeball that one. Okay, so now that that's covered up, we're gonna go spray this with our darkest color. And I did keep the handle taped. Right after you've spray painted your darkest spray paint color, you're going to go back and remove all of the tape on this tumbler, with the exception of the handle, because we still don't want to spray paint that. It's going to be pink in the end. If you don't want it to be pink, or if you want it to be a different color, just spray paint it when you see fit. But for mine, I'm just going to keep this handle covered the entire process. So because of that issue with the epoxy pulling back, you'll notice here that the top rim of my tumbler has some paint exposed. So we are going to go back, and you'll see me fix that later in the process. Just disregard that for now. It looks terrible, but it will be fixed once I retape things and spray paint over it. But like I said, at this point, just make sure you remove both your horizontal and your vertical stripes of tape. You should only be left with vertical stripes at this point, and then we're going to go back in. We've got one more spray paint section to do and the glitter booty to do, and I'll show you how I do that next. Once your spray paint is fully cured, you're going to go back in with your painter's tape, and we're going to cover up all of the horizontal and vertical lines. We want to leave some light pink glitter and paint exposed, because we do need to go back in with our medium mauve color one more time to connect all of the plaids together. So basically covering up every single paint section, making sure that you are really lining that tape up really well. You want all of your squares to connect once we remove all of the tape. And if you're not careful when you lay that painter's tape down, if it's not lined up exactly, you're going to have gaps between your checks or between your plaids. And it's going to be pretty obvious because it's spray paint and we're not using glitter to cover things up. There's really not a way to fix it. So just being proactive and ensuring that the tape is lined up nice and clean and crisp every single time, that's really going to help kind of elevate the end result and make sure it looks nice and professional, nice and clean. We don't have any gaps or anything like that. And then once we've spray painted this as well, we are going to glitter the booty of the tumbler. Now, I took the painter's tape on the bottom and I taped that off as well. And then we're going to glitter that once we finish our spray paint. I was getting ready to spray paint this with the mauve color, and I just decided it would be a good stopping point to spray paint the bottom and glitter the bottom with gold. I didn't want to have to double back and re-tape off all of my squares. I didn't want to chance pulling the tape up and re-pulling the paint again and chancing that it would pull up and expose like the base of the tumbler. So I just did it at this point when everything was taped off. I spray painted it gold, and then I'm going to tape off a little bit at the bottom so I get a nice crisp line where the glitter starts and ends. And I'm using, I believe it was Midas from Peachy Olive Glitters. I'll double check on that for you guys. I'll link everything in the description box. But I'm just going to use a UV epoxy to apply the glitter. Normally I don't do that, but I didn't want this tape sitting on there for a long time waiting for a regular epoxy to cure, and I didn't want to pull the tape and retape it like I just said. So I just used UV epoxy, and it shot all over my entire desk and my whole workspace. I don't know what happened there, but we're just going to apply that along the bottom rim and sprinkle that glitter on. I wanted just a good solid gold color. I didn't want a light color like Athena. I wanted just a true gold to complement those colors that matched the vinyl stripes that I'm putting on later in the process. And so I just chose that one over Athena. And this is definitely an underrated glitter. I have had this for ages. I haven't used it on maybe 2 tumblers. I don't know. I never use it. It's definitely going in my arsenal. This is such a pretty gold, and it's such a good Christmas gold too. So once that glitter is all applied, I'm just going to pat the bottom glitter down so we don't have a bunch of exposed raw glitter. It's going to help lessen the coats of epoxy that it takes to get full coverage on this tumbler. And then I'm going to remove that little thin piece of tape at the bottom. I'm going to cure that because it's UV epoxy. If you've got regular epoxy, just pull the tape and leave it at that point. And then we're going to go back in once that's fully cured and it's going to be sealed. The glitter is going to be sealed. I'm going to go back in and I'll spray paint it with my very last spray paint section. Before you go in with your last spray paint section, you want to make sure that you are taping off the glitter at the bottom if you glittered it at the same point I did. I am still paying attention to where my painter's tape is going because I still want those square, perfectly crisp lines at the bottom. If you're not being careful, you are going to get a little bit of a wonky edge. We are going to put a vinyl stripe along the bottom, so that will help to cover that up if it's not completely perfect, but just practice makes perfect, so make sure you're still paying attention to those lines. And then I'm going to tape off the bottom as well just to make sure no overspray from that last spray paint color gets on that glitter. And then we'll go ahead and spray it and remove all our tape to let that sit and dry before epoxy. I do still need to go over the spray paint sections that were pulled up with the painter's tape. But at this point, I'm going to put my second coat of epoxy on. I didn't want to retape things, like I've said 10 times in this video, and chance pulling up more paint. So I just decided I'm going to go in with a second coat of epoxy that'll cover up that rim that the epoxy pulled away from in that first coat. Make sure everything is nice and covered up, and then I'm just going to go back in. I'll retape everything back off and re-spray paint all of my mauve sections. That's the only section that needed to be spray painted over again. So I'm just going to put that on, making sure that I'm getting all of the handle covered up. I just completely stop my turner and make sure all sides of the handle are completely covered in epoxy. I don't have any gaps or pooling of the epoxy or anything. If you do get it pooled around that handle, just make sure to pull that away because it does build up with epoxy and it gets really cloudy and bubbly looking if it's got too much epoxy on it. We're going to let that sit and spin after we torched off any air bubbles, and then I will go ahead and tape off that last spray paint section, which I'm doing here. So at this point, we are ready to go in, once the tape's pulled, obviously, ready to go in with another coat of epoxy. We're going to cover up that spray paint. We're going to cover up more of that glitter with epoxy. I did sand down that bottom rim right after that first coat of epoxy over the glitter because we've already got one coat of epoxy on it from the beginning stages. It was a little bit behind, so I didn't want any pokey bits of glitter sticking out or anything like that. So I sanded it right after that first coat, and then I sanded it after the second coat as well, and that pretty much smoothed it out so we didn't have any pokey bits at the end. So what I'm doing here, this is actually just like a little nail Q-tip. I do my own nails now, and I have this just for cleanup, and it worked out perfectly. It's like a toothpick basically with like a little bit of cotton at the end of it. So I just stuck that in my acetone, and I had just a few little tiny little pieces of spray paint that seeped under my painter's tape. So I just cleaned that up with the little toothpick here, and then I was good to move into my final coats of epoxy. I was thinking that I put a coat of epoxy on over top of the spray paint before I put my stripes on, but I did not. So I just cut out, well, I didn't cut out, I have a whole bunch of just stripes on hand, but I cut them out when I did cut them at 11.5 width by 0.08 in height. And I'm going to put those over the light pink and the mauve sections going vertically, and then I'm going to put it over the light pink and mauve sections going horizontally as well. And then I did put a piece of vinyl going around horizontally to cover up the seam between the glitter section at the bottom and that very last section of plaid to give that a nice, clean, crisp look. Once the stripes are fully applied, I'm going to put this on my turner and put a coat of polycrylic over the vinyl stripes to make sure nothing lifts under that epoxy, and then we'll finish it up with our final coat. I did one thin coat of polycrylic over top of the vinyl striping, and I just hit that with my heat gun to speed up the drying process. Once that polycrylic is clear and dry to the touch, you're free to go in with your final coats of epoxy. For this tumbler, I went in with one coat of Flynn Sisters Artist Cure resin. She does have a new formula. It's the same resin. It's got the ultraviolet purple dye in it, but it's like 100 times better. I didn't think that the formula could get any better, and it's a much thinner viscosity than both the original Artist Cure and the Fast Cure, which allows any microbubbles to float to the surface quicker. This formula, I said to her that a part of me wishes that I wasn't an affiliate, so you guys didn't think I was trying to sell you something, because I would still be bragging about this formula even if I wasn't a rep for this company. It is incredible. The bubbles are like bare minimum, and when you're putting the epoxy on the tumbler, the bubbles basically pop themselves when you're running your gloved hand along it. I don't even know. I didn't think it could get better, and it did. So if you haven't tried it, I would 100% recommend it. Just keep in mind it's much thinner. It goes a lot further than the old formula did. You do have to do maybe another coat, maybe two if it's a really chunky glitter. But I am a huge fan of this new formula. She is running a Black Friday sale right now through, I believe, November 30th. And it's 40% off the original formula and then 25% off the new formula, as well as vinyl, UV DTFs, rhinestones, things like that. So check that out. You cannot stack my discount code with it because there's such low prices already. So you won't be able to use my discount for this one, but any future orders, definitely use that discount code. So we're going to let this cure. Don't forget to torch it before you let that fully cure overnight. And then after about 24 hours, this tumbler is completely finished. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell button for notifications on future tutorials, and I will see you in the next video.